They called it a dress code violation, but no one believed that was the real reason. A beloved principal suddenly fired, her reputation left in shambles. Parents whispered in hushed tones, trying to make sense of it. But what they uncovered next would shake the entire school district to its core. What happens when the truth is far worse than anyone imagined? Let us know in the comments section below. The moment Alicia Freeman stepped into the school office that morning, she knew something was off. The air felt different. It wasn't the usual hum of the faculty chatting over coffee or the soft clatter of papers being shuffled in the front office. It was silent. Too silent. Eyes followed her, shifting away when she met their gaze. The secretary, Mrs. Dunham, a woman who had worked at Brookstone Elementary for nearly 2 decades, refused to look up from her computer screen. Even the janitor, old Mr. Hensley, who always had a kind word and a joke for her, nodded stiffly and pushed his mop along the linoleum floor. Alicia straightened her blazer, the deep maroon fabric crisp against her skin. A dress code violation. That's what they were calling it. After 15 years as principal, after dedicating her entire life to this school, to these kids, they were going to reduce her legacy to a technicality? She exhaled sharply and marched into her office, only to find 2 men in suits waiting for her. Superintendent Richard Lawson sat stiffly in one of the chairs opposite her desk, his arms folded, his expression unreadable. Beside him, a man she didn't recognize, a legal advisor most likely, adjusted his tie and flicked through a folder of documents. "Miss Freeman," Lawson started, his voice smooth, rehearsed, fake. "Thank you for coming in. We need to discuss an urgent matter regarding your employment." Alicia didn't sit down. She crossed her arms, refusing to let them see even an ounce of weakness. "I assumed this would be urgent, given that I was escorted out of the school yesterday like a criminal," she said, her voice unwavering. "Let's not waste time. Go ahead and say what you brought me here to say." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Ms. Freeman, after reviewing the incident, the school board has decided to proceed with the termination of your employment due to repeated violations of the district's professional attire policy." Alicia let out a bitter laugh. There it was. The ridiculous excuse they had landed on. "Dress code violation," she repeated, shaking her head. "Tell me, Mr. Lawson, which part of my attire was so offensive that it warranted a termination instead of a simple conversation?" Lawson's jaw tensed, but the lawyer was quicker to respond. "The policy explicitly states that all faculty members are to adhere to the district's professional dress code at all times while on school grounds." "There have been multiple reports." "Reports from who?" Alicia cut in. "Because the last time I checked, the parents, my staff, and even my students don't seem to have a problem with the way I dress." Lawson finally spoke, his voice colder. "We're not here to debate this. The decision is final." Alicia stared at him, her mind racing. They weren't even trying to make this look legitimate. No meetings, no prior warnings, no chance to defend herself. Just a verdict delivered as if she were already guilty. She had seen this coming. The board had been looking for a reason, any reason, to get rid of her. And now they had manufactured one. But why? She leaned forward, resting her palms on her desk. "This isn't about a dress code violation, we all know that, so why don't you tell me what this is really about?" The lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Lawson, however, just smiled. A slow, deliberate smirk that confirmed everything she feared. "You have until the end of the day to collect your belongings," he said, "and I would advise you to not cause a scene." Alicia didn't move, didn't flinch. Then, just as calmly, she turned, walked to the door, and opened it. "I think we're done here." She walked out of her office, past the silent staff, past the teachers too afraid to make eye contact, past the students who didn't yet know their principal was being erased. She walked straight out of the building without looking back. But she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The first phone call came before Alicia even pulled into her driveway. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat, Jonathan Parker's name flashing across the screen. She already knew why he was calling. Jonathan was never the type to sit back and let things slide, especially when it came to his daughter's education. Alicia took a deep breath, pressing the green button on her car's Bluetooth. "Jonathan, what the hell is going on?" His voice was sharp, clipped, laced with barely contained anger. "I just got a message from my daughter saying you're not coming back to Brookstone. What's happening?" Alicia's fingers gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles going white. "They fired me." Silence. A slow, simmering silence, the kind that preceded a storm. "Fired you for what?" Jonathan's voice was lower now, more dangerous. "They're calling it a dress code violation," Alicia said, her tone carefully neutral. A sharp exhale on the other end of the line. "That's bullshit." She swallowed. "I know." A beat passed. Then Jonathan spoke again, his voice controlled but firm. "I'm coming over." The line clicked dead before she could refuse. Alicia pulled into her driveway, resting her forehead against the steering wheel for a long moment before stepping out. She had barely unlocked her front door when another call came through. Melissa Hayes. Alicia hesitated before answering. Melissa wasn't just another concerned parent. She was heavily involved in the PTA, a well-known voice in the district, and a woman who had always considered herself an ally. But Alicia knew how quickly those alliances could shift when push came to shove. Still, she picked up. "Alicia, Melissa's voice faltered. "I just heard. Are you okay?" Alicia let out a slow breath. "I'm fine. This doesn't make sense. A dress code violation? That's the best excuse they could come up with?" "Apparently." A deep sigh. "Listen," Melissa said, her voice quieter now, more cautious. "I just got off the phone with some of the other parents. People are talking. There's something about this that doesn't feel right." Alicia closed her eyes. "I know. I think we need to dig into this," Melissa continued. "People are already organizing. They want answers. You've done too much for this school, for our kids, for them to just erase you like this." Alicia's throat tightened. For a moment, the weight of it all threatened to crash down on her. The years she had spent building this school into something better, the students she had fought for, the battles she had won. And now, this. "I appreciate it, Melissa," Alicia said, her voice steadier than she felt. "But be careful. If they're willing to do this to me, they won't hesitate to go after anyone who tries to help." Melissa hesitated, then said something that sent a cold shiver down Alicia's spine. "I think this was planned." Alicia's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "I mean, this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. I heard from someone on the PTA that the school board's been looking for a way to push you out for months." "Months?" Alicia felt her pulse quicken. Had she really been walking into a trap this entire time? Before she could answer, headlights swept across her driveway. A car door slammed. Jonathan Parker was here. "I have to go," Alicia said quickly. "I'll call you later." She hung up just as Jonathan reached her doorstep, his face like thunder. "They're hiding something," he said, skipping a greeting entirely. Alicia sighed, stepping aside to let him in. "I know." Jonathan wasted no time. He paced the length of her living room like a man barely containing his fury. "We're not going to let them get away with this." Alicia rubbed her temples. "Jonathan." "No, Alicia." He turned to her, eyes blazing. "We both know this isn't about a damn dress code. So why now? Why today?" Alicia didn't answer. She didn't want to say it out loud. Didn't want to admit that she already had a theory. She had been digging, looking into some irregularities in the school's financial reports, some missing funds, a few red flags that didn't add up. But she hadn't told anyone, not yet. Jonathan studied her and his expression shifted. "You know something, don't you?" Alicia hesitated. "I think," she started, then stopped. No, she couldn't be reckless. Not now. Finally, she exhaled. "I think this goes deeper than me." Jonathan's jaw clenched. "Then we find out exactly what the hell they're trying to hide," he said. Alicia didn't argue, because deep down, she already knew. She had just become a threat, and now they were trying to erase her before she could expose them. The meeting was supposed to be routine, a standard school board session, the kind where parents grumbled about lunch menus and after-school programs, while the board members nodded and smiled like they actually cared. But tonight was different. Tonight, the gymnasium at Brookstone Elementary was filled beyond capacity. Parents lined the walls, some standing on chairs just to see. Even the local news station had sent a camera crew, their equipment set up in the back, waiting for something newsworthy to happen. At the center of it all, sitting behind the long oak table, was Superintendent Richard Lawson and the rest of the school board. Their usual smug expressions were gone, replaced with thinly veiled discomfort. They knew why everyone was here. The microphone crackled as Melissa Hayes stepped up to the podium, adjusting the notes in her hands. She wasn't a natural speaker, Alicia knew that much, but tonight she didn't need to be. The anger in the room did the speaking for her. "We're here tonight," Melissa began, her voice steady, "because we deserve answers." A murmur rippled through the crowd, voices hushed but seething. Melissa's eyes locked onto Lawson. Principal Alicia Freeman has served this school with dedication and integrity for 15 years, and yet, without warning, without so much as a formal review, she was removed from her position. "We were told this was due to a dress code violation." She paused, letting the ridiculousness of it settle over the room. "But we all know that's a lie." A chorus of agreement echoed from the audience. Lawson leaned into his microphone, forcing a polite smile. "Mrs. Hayes, while we appreciate your concerns, this is not an open forum for personnel matters. The decision was made in accordance with district policy." Jonathan Parker shot out of his seat. "What policy?" Lawson hesitated. Jonathan took one step closer. "Tell me which policy states that a principal with an impeccable record can be fired over a subjective dress code violation." Lawson's mouth opened, then closed. He had nothing. Melissa didn't let up. "We've done our research, Mr. Lawson. There is no documented instance of another principal being terminated for a dress code violation in this district." Silence. Then, from the back of the room, a mother's voice rang out, "Tell the truth." The chant spread like wildfire. "Tell the truth. Tell the truth." Lawson adjusted his tie. The other board members shifted in their seats, exchanging nervous glances. Alicia sat near the front, arms folded, watching it all unfold. She had promised herself she wouldn't speak tonight, that she would let the parents fight this battle for her. But she knew better. These people had risked their own standing in the community to be here, standing against a system that would just as easily turn on them next. And that was something she couldn't let go unanswered. She stood, walked to the front, and took the microphone. The room fell silent. Lawson's lips thinned into a line. He hadn't expected her to show up, let alone speak. Alicia's voice was calm, measured, but unshakable. "I was fired because I started asking questions." Lawson's face twitched. She took a step forward. "I started looking into financial records. I noticed discrepancies, missing funds, money allocated for student programs that never made it into our classrooms." Murmurs swept the room. "I followed the paper trail," Alicia continued. "And do you know where it led?" Every single board member stiffened. Alicia turned toward the crowd, letting her words land. "Right here, to this very board." Gasps, shock, and then anger. Lawson's hand shot up, signaling to cut the microphone. "This is not appropriate." Jonathan's voice cut through the commotion. "Oh, it's very appropriate." Melissa was already holding up her phone, screen flashing with digital copies of school budget reports. "We pulled the records, Lawson. she said. Millions of dollars unaccounted for. Lawson's face paled. A voice rang out from the crowd. They fired her because she found out the truth. The tension exploded. Parents rushed forward, demanding explanations, hurling accusations. The board members scrambled to control the chaos. Lawson's voice faltered through the microphone. This is completely unfounded. These allegations are baseless. But it was too late. The truth was out, and there was no covering it up now. The school board meeting had ended in chaos, but the battle was far from over. The next morning, the district was on fire. The story had spread beyond the walls of Brookstone Elementary, making its way onto local news stations, social media, and even national headlines. Parents flooded the superintendent's office with emails and calls, demanding explanations. By noon, a formal investigation had been launched. And by evening, Lawson was gone. Alicia stood in front of her television, watching the breaking news as a reporter outside the district office confirmed it. Richard Lawson had officially resigned. It wasn't just him. 3 other board members had stepped down, their names now linked to the financial scandal that was too big to ignore. Alicia exhaled, her chest tight, her hands trembling. It was over. A knock at her door pulled her out of her daze. When she opened it, she found Jonathan Parker and Melissa Hayes standing there, smiles wide, their eyes bright with victory. Behind them, a small group of parents and teachers had gathered on her porch, a community united in triumph. Jonathan grinned. Looks like we got him. Alicia let out a breathless laugh. We did. Melissa stepped forward. You need to see this. She held out her phone, playing a video that had been circulating all day. The school district had released a statement. Alicia listened as the official spokesperson confirmed what they already knew. The embezzlement scandal had been real, and Alicia's firing had been an attempt to silence her. But the final part of the statement made her freeze. The board has decided to reinstate Principal Alicia Freeman, effective immediately. Alicia's breath hitched. Jonathan smirked. Guess that means you've got work to do. Tears burned her eyes, but she laughed, shaking her head. Unbelievable. Melissa stepped forward, hugging her tightly. You earned this. As the crowd behind them cheered, Alicia felt something she hadn't felt in days. Hope. The next morning, she walked into Brookstone Elementary with her head held high. The second she stepped inside, the entire hallway erupted in applause. Teachers lined the walls, clapping and cheering. Some had tears in their eyes. Others called her name, their faces shining with pride. And then, from the far end of the hall, a familiar voice rang out. Principal Freeman's back. Alicia turned just in time to see a group of students rushing toward her, their backpacks bouncing, their faces lit with excitement. She knelt down just as they threw their arms around her, a whirlwind of little hands and warm laughter. Did you beat the bad guys? One little girl asked, her wide eyes searching Alicia's. Alicia smiled, wiping a tear from her cheek. We all did, she said. And for the first time in days, she truly believed it.